This video is not for kids. Go do your homework. It has taken me months, like literally almost a year, to sit down and make this video because I still have so many questions about the doll that we're going to look at today. If you're on my Patreon, you know I have this doll, but this has been a complete secret until now. Basically, I've had this doll for I think like 9 months or so, and I just haven't been able to figure out how to make a video about her because I think I actually have one of the original prototypes of the original Pleasant Company American Girl dolls. And if you think it's this one, you're wrong. It's actually this one. So as you can see, we have a lot to talk about today. So a quick backstory on this doll. You have probably never seen anything that looks like this unless you crawl eBay every minute of every single day like I do. But this doll hopped into my inbox about a year ago. Someone had come across her, I believe at a consignment shop, presumably from an estate sale. So we don't have a lot of information about her. So today we're going to be kind of doing some investigating. I'm going to show you a lot of the details about her that makes me think what I think about this doll. But this doll was found in Middleton, Wisconsin in a consignment shop, and a lot of really cool stuff has come out of the Wisconsin area, obviously, because there are a lot of original Pleasant Company employees from like the back in the day, like in the 80s, that were a part of the original team of Pleasant Company. And back that early in the company, Pleasant Roland was offering a lot of the original prototypes and samples, and a lot of things like that were offered to the employees first. Like they would do these employee sales basically, and a lot of times things like prototypes would come through those sales. I actually have a few accessory sets that are prototypes from the 80s as well, but this popped up in my inbox. Like I said, somebody messaged me about a year ago asking questions about it, and admittedly, when I got the email, it was pretty generic. It's like very vague. They were like, hey, I think I have an American Girl doll prototype. Would you be interested in having a look at it? And I was sitting here like, sure, Jan. Yeah, you totally have an American Girl doll prototype. Because I get emails like that a lot, actually, just from people that have stumbled across my videos and think that they have something incredibly rare because they read a BuzzFeed article or whatever, and they're just not into the doll world. So a lot of times people will send me something like, how rare is this? And it's just like a 1995 Samantha or something. So I'm usually pretty dubious of any emails like that I get. But this person pretty promptly emailed me back a bunch of pictures of this doll, and I was like, oh my actual god, I think this is an actual prototype. So obviously I had a million questions, and they had a million questions for me. We were both sort of like, what even is this? Because I believe the person that ultimately ended up selling it to me found it at a consignment shop, and unfortunately it's likely that the original owner of this doll might no longer be on this earth with us, and that's probably why some of the story has gotten lost about her, which absolutely pains me. You know, that's something that you find more and more often as you live longer, that, we're not all here forever. And sometimes there are people that have some really cool things and really interesting stories that never got shared with the right audience. And I'm hoping we can dig some of that up today. If there's anybody that's out there that knows anything at all possible about this doll. The earliest days of Pleasant Company are still shrouded in so much mystery because we didn't have the internet back then. And in those early days, American Girl was not American Girl at the time. It was just a school teacher and textbook publisher's hope and a dream, in 1986, that ended up becoming a countrywide phenomenon basically in the toy industry, and still is to this day. It's certainly had a chokehold on me for like the last 30 something years. And as I've fallen deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of Pleasant Company, I'm finding all these really, really cool things that none of us have ever seen. It's just taken a lot of time and digging and investigating and random things showing up on eBay to start piecing together the original history of Pleasant Company. So back to my emails with the person that found this doll, we were just sort of like, I don't really know for sure what's going on with her. So naturally, I requested some more photos and had a look at her. And honestly, I just kind of panicked. I have to say, I didn't really know what to say. I wasn't sure that this person was trying to sell the doll either. And I kind of gave them as much information as I knew at the time, and then got really busy. My dog passed away this time last year, and that was really hard. And I just basically shirked all my responsibilities, including any email that anybody sent me in the last year. I probably have responded to about 10% of them. So this kind of ended up falling to the wayside, and I just kind of forgot about it because life was so chaotic and sad and new at the time. So I had completely forgotten about the doll, even though it was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Again, the person that had her and was sending pictures to me, showed me pictures of the neck stamp and all of these little details. And I was like, that is definitely a Pleasant Company doll. Like I said, we're going to look at all these details, but to look at it, I was like, that's not a custom. That's not a bootleg. Like, that is a genuine Pleasant Company doll that none of us have ever seen before. So a few months later, I want to say it was like late summer, this doll actually ended up being put on eBay. Presumably the seller like gave up on trying to get a response from me. Again, I was in my own world doing, dealing with trauma. And the doll showed up on eBay for bids. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to buy this doll. Now, mind you, I have been off of Facebook groups for a little over a year now. And I've just, I had a falling out with a few people in there, and it got messy, and I just have left that in the past. But that's where a lot of public, they were private Facebook groups, but that's where a lot of talk about this stuff generally would happen, as far as stuff that I was concerned about anyway. A lot of vintage Pleasant Company stuff is talked about in a couple of different Facebook groups. When stuff like this pops up, people like to post photos of them and talk about what this might actually be. But because I wasn't in those communities anymore, I have no idea if this even showed up in those spaces or not, and if anybody had anything to say about them. So I was just kind of flying blind at the time. I was like, okay, I really want this. I have no idea who's laid their eyes on this. And even I was like being coy with my friends that asked about it, because I was like, I'm gonna get this freaking doll. All that's to say is the doll went up for auction, and yeah, basically I want to say it was like in August, but I put in my bid last minute, and it cost me a lot of money. I'll have to say I did have to bid on her, but she went for a lot less than I actually thought she was going to. So if for some reason bidder number 2 is watching this video, just know you weren't even close. Like, my bid was like probably twice what she ended up selling for. So anyway, I won the doll. And again, there's still like always that little bit of mystery. It's like, you don't want to spend $10,000 on something if you're not like entirely sure it isn't a bootleg, because there's no replacement for actually being able to see something and handle it in person. So that's what I did. I just took a chance, and I was like 99% sure that this was like an actual prototype. And once I got her here and unboxed her and really started looking at the details that we're going to look at in just a second, I was like, this is a prototype of some sort. I don't know if this was made in 1985 or 84. Probably not. I want to say, like, my best guess is this doll is actually a test, like a color test for skin tones. So again, there's a lot of like information that's been out there. We've tried to piece everything together. But if you're unfamiliar with how the American Girl dolls were originally made, a company called Goetz that was based in West Germany was the original manufacturer for these dolls. And I don't know exactly which parts were made where. I am pretty sure the wigs were made in China. So it is possible that all of the vinyl pieces were made in China as well. I do not know. That would be something that I would love to know. Look, today I'm going to just try and pull as many like connections as I can and call in as many favors as I can with this doll, because I think we might actually have an artifact of Pleasant Company history here that I would love to know more information about. So if you happen to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, I mean, even at this point, like if you have a connection to Pleasant Roland, I've never asked for this until this very moment, but if somebody somewhere knows how to just reach out to her and say, hey, what is this? I would love an answer. I think many of us would love an answer on this. So I'm going to continue to dig to see if I can find any more information about her. But to finally see her in person, she shares most of the common features of the original 1986 Pleasant Company dolls. And like I said, I think she was a test pool to test different skin colors. Now, Goetz was primarily making dolls in this skin tone and one that's one shade lighter at the time. Those were the main 2 skin tones that they were making. This, as far as like American Girl is considered, they would call this a number 10 skin tone. And I think that the one that Goetz was making is somewhere around probably like a number 5, maybe even a little bit lighter. But this is like a whole different like ballpark of skin tones. This doll is extremely pale. So that was one of the questions I like had about the doll, having not seen her in person, is what's going on with the skin tone? Because she looks incredibly light toned compared to most other Goetz dolls that I've seen, I have to say. Like, she's that much lighter than even some of the, like, most of the dolls that they were making at this time. So I do kind of think that maybe they were testing out some colors. And the reason I think this might have been a color test for Samantha is just because of the dark hair and the fact that her skin tone is so pale. I thought maybe that was something that they were experimenting with to have more of like an Edwardian look to her. I'm not sure, you know, and it could have just been a mistake pull. I don't know, maybe like it was like a color that they didn't even intend to make. But like I said, Pleasant Roland was known to sell and give away her original like prototypes and samples and things, because as you can imagine, a company like that with that many pieces, and at the time there were only 3 dolls, but like a lot of different moving parts, you know, to Pleasant Roland, she wasn't thinking she was making collector's items. These were just samples of things that just to her were probably just like, okay, we didn't go with this, so I don't really need to look at this anymore. So it's very likely that this doll was just a sample that came across her desk and she was like, I don't really like that skin tone, and then it just went into the employee sale bin. So I'm gonna put this Samantha to the side a little bit. She's the doll that we're gonna compare this original prototype to. So I'm going to also insert some like photos and like extra close-up video of this doll as well, so we can really look at her up close. But one of the things that I knew that this was truly something special is this doll does not have a Goods neck stamp like what a lot of people consider like the original prototypes to have. So Goods was actually making a doll with this head sculpt for a couple of years before Pleasant Roland bought the rights to manufacture these dolls. So there are Goods dolls that look very much like this in their catalog, you know, in the mid 80s basically. And then once Pleasant Roland bought the rights basically to produce this head sculpt under Pleasant Company, Goods stopped making this altogether. But basically the original ones that Goods made had a Goods neck stamp on them. And so when you see a doll that like people typically refer to as Romina, which essentially at this point is a collector term, but that doll that you see on eBay and, you know, floating around Facebook groups is just a Goods doll. She is typically referred to as a prototype, but she was actually a doll that was in production that the public could buy at the time, and they have Goods neck stamps. This doll here actually has a Pleasant Company neck stamp, if you can believe it, and that's what makes this doll extra intriguing. Like, this wasn't just some random Goods doll. And again, Goods made like hundreds and hundreds of different types of dolls with different skin tones and all different, you know, their catalog was much broader than Pleasant Company's catalog was. So this doll looks nothing like any of the original Pleasant Company dolls. In my opinion, like, you know, she just looks, you know, insanely different. So right off the bat, the most interesting thing to me about her is the fact that she does have a Pleasant Company neck stamp, and it matches this doll completely. So this doll is a 1986, what we call Big Tooth Samantha. This doll was made in 1986 and was part of the first issue. This is one I got in mint condition several years ago. So she is completely untouched. She has her original factory hair, no modifications or anything. A perfectly mint 1986 Samantha, which is, and there are 2 different versions of them as far as the teeth go. There's what we call a big tooth, where they have 2 really big teeth in their mouth. And then there's what collectors have called a chipped tooth Samantha. And those are the dolls that have kind of this small, like some of them look a little rounded. Some of them look like normal American Girl teeth that have like a little chip like cut out of them. And they most often have like a little bit of paint over the gap in their teeth. So 2 different tooth styles in 1986. And this one is a big tooth 1986. This one is also a big tooth doll. She has the exact same tooth paint as this doll here. This is one way I know that this is not a hand painted custom, is because this doll has the exact, and when I say exact, like they are perfect matches to each other, these teeth. This is not a custom paint job. This would have been done in whatever factory made these dolls, whether it was them painting them in China. I'm almost certain that they were painting them in West Germany. I just don't know if they were cast in West Germany or China, but whoever painted this doll painted this doll. So right off the bat, very, very interesting. Again, very similar lip color as well. It obviously looks different because her skin tone is lighter and it's slightly translucent. So it does look like a brighter pink, but it's roughly the same color as the original 1986 Samantha. And as far as paint goes, there's one other really weird thing about her. Is she does have like painted on eyebrows that I'm going to show in B-roll. I'm going to try to keep her hair looking nice, but the eyebrows that are on her were definitely not painted in the factory. These were done by somebody dipping a little paintbrush in some craft paint that is a completely different like finish and everything. You could just tell they're hand painted. They're not stenciled on. So, you know, again, as far as I can guess, I kind of think that this doll showed up at the Pleasant Company headquarters with no eyebrows, and they may have painted some on just to like see what this doll would look like with eyebrows, because most of the original Pleasant Company dolls have very light eyebrows. Some of them are even lighter than the Samantha's. I'm having a hard time showing them, but the original Pleasant Company dolls had very light and in some cases almost invisible eyebrows. So it's very likely that these were just hand painted by somebody, if not Pleasant herself, who knows. They're very crudely done though, so I don't think that they were factory made. Another interesting thing, again, this kind of makes me think that this is maybe earmarked for like maybe a possibility for color test for Samantha, is this doll has very dark brown eyes, and part of Samantha's character is she has brown eyes. They probably look almost black on camera, but they are a very dark brown. They're actually very similar to the American Girl Today color that they went with at, in the mid 90s. But these are the pinwheel eyes. And if you'll recall, like Samantha was the only doll of the original three that had decal eyes, the eyes that are printed and basically pressed into the eyeball. Whereas Samantha, or Molly and Kirsten, had what we call pinwheel eyes, which are basically plastic molded eyes that were basically filled with paint and then ultimately later resin. But these are definitely Goods eyes. Again, I've seen, like, at this point, hundreds of eyeballs that were made in the Goods factory, and these are definitely them. And one of the reasons you know that is because of how badly these eyes are silvered, particularly this doll's left eye. That's just an unfortunate thing that is part of Goods's checkered past, I guess, is even though these are artisan dolls, there were just some methods that didn't hold up as well, and Silver Eye absolutely plagues the earliest Goods, like Pleasant Company dolls that were made by Goods in that era, basically. So that is one unfortunate thing about her, is she does have pretty bad Silver Eye that makes her not display, like, as well as she could, but I guess I should make it abundantly clear that at least as long as I have this doll, there will be no modifications made to her whatsoever. I consider this to be, like, I probably should be wearing cotton gloves at this point, but I consider this to be a relic of toy history. So unless somebody can prove me otherwise, I'm treating this as something that's to be preserved and not altered. And I would consider untying her neck string and taking her eyes out and painting, like, that to me is altering the history. So I want to leave her exactly as I received her, especially until maybe we can get some more answers. But I plan to preserve her exactly as she is, at least as long as I'm alive or as long as I have her. So again, she has the very soft eyelashes like Molly and Kirsten had in the beginning. And interestingly, very light eyelids. So again, this is how I kind of know that this doll really isn't a custom that would have been made by some random person, is because of the skin tone, which I'll get into a little bit more in a second. But these eyelids are very much like, those are a factory job, again, that sort of align with everything I've seen from Goods from this era. And they are, again, not the same color as an original Pleasant Company doll, but again, a much, much lighter color. Now, to quickly touch on her skin tone, she, again, I think this is probably her most obvious feature, is that her skin is extremely light. And that's one of the questions that kind of came up when I was looking at her, as I was really trying to examine whether or not she had been bleached. That's how light her skin tone is. And she does kind of have that look of a doll that might have been soaking in bleach for a while, but that's really not how this vinyl works. You wouldn't be able to stick vinyl like this and just bleach the color out of it. Again, it's very translucent. Like, vinyl is not an opaque material. It's got some translucency to it, which is why it's so popular for making dolls, is because it kind of has that similar translucency like skin does. It's not like a really hard, opaque looking surface. It has like a suppleness to it. So you would not be able, like, you can obviously dye dolls, but you can make them darker, but you pretty much can't make them lighter, because to dye a doll, you're basically adding pigment to translucent vinyl. So to take a color like this and make it lighter, you wouldn't be able to add color to it without making it more opaque. So to look at her in person and look at her fingertips and everything, this doll was cast with this color. Now, it's possible that it could have lightened over time. It just could have been made with some pigments that weren't as color fast as others. It is possible that she was darker, 40 years ago, but we have never seen any single Pleasant Company doll age to this degree. Like, again, especially like a 1980s Pleasant Company doll, none of them have ever gone from this tone to this tone. So this certainly is an original skin tone. Another reason I'm almost certain that her skin tone hasn't been altered by somebody like after the fact is that all of her face paint is still intact. And like I said, it is a perfect match for all of the Pleasant Companies, or like the Goods and Pleasant Company stencils that were being made at the time. So again, her tooth shape and lip shape are perfectly stenciled on. They're not hand painted on like these eyebrows. So you wouldn't be able to this heavily alter a skin tone and also maintain the original paint. So again, I'm almost like, for that reason too, like, I'm pretty certain that this is an original prototype. Another question I had about this doll that I think I've kind of figured out is I was curious if her hair had been cut. Now, one thing I will mention about this doll is she is in pristine shape. This is not a doll that's been handled by a child. And again, I've had hundreds of Pleasant Company dolls, you know, basically go through the revolving door that is my house. So I can spot when a doll has been played with or, you know, colored on by a child or whatever, or even just like cuddled and played with. Typically their stuffing will get a lot softer and their neck strings will be kind of pulled on. So to me, it's very unlikely that this doll's hair was cut. Especially, it's kind of hard to see on camera because it's so dark. This hair is jet black, by the way. This is, I mean, you can probably see as a comparison with Samantha. Samantha's hair got darkened in the 90s, but this hair is jet black. This is a very similar tone as to what you would see like on a number 4 from the Girl of Today range. And it was the color that they were using on their Asian dolls that Goods was making in the 80s as well. This is, and I think they were doing that on the indigenous dolls as well. So this is a hair color that we do see from this time, just not as commonly, but it certainly is a Goods wig. I'm going to use Pleasant Company and Goods probably interchangeably here, but Goods was making these for Pleasant Company. So the reason I don't think this is cut is because it has a flip on the end here, and generally hair that's cut is not going to have this even of a cut, and it's not going to have like this harsh of a flip on the end. This looks like a finished trim to me. And again, with her bangs, certainly not cut, and they're shaped very, very much like the original Pleasant Company wig. So we have pie bangs on this doll as well. Again, I'm probably going to have to show some photos just so you can see this a little bit closer, but we have what, you know, collectors have been calling a top knot, but basically this hole in the top of the wig where the bangs come out and sort of form a triangle, which we call pie bangs. And they fall like just above her eyelashes, which is very common for Goods and Pleasant Company in this era. Again, to me, the way these bangs fall on this doll, that alone makes me pretty sure that this is an original wig to this doll and she didn't have like a wig swap or something, because I know that this doll kind of has a severe look, but you got to remember when a company is kind of imagining up a character and dolls, you try a lot of really weird and out there things just to know that you've made the right decision. Because even though there are dolls that look a lot more like Samantha in Goods' catalog in 1985, Pleasant Rowland likely was like, well, let's just try some lighter skin tones. Let's try some darker skin tones and darker hairs to make the doll her own. But as you can imagine, if you tried something like this and compared it to this, it's like, okay, this is probably going to be more popular with the masses, so we'll go with this. But it's very likely they just tried some stuff to see if there were some different options that they could go with to further differentiate what they were doing from Goods. But like I said, if there was any doubt that this was an original Pleasant Company Goods wig, if you look at the wig cap, it's exactly like the dolls from 1986. And this was one of the key features that really helped me be sure that this was a prototype that was made in a factory and not just a custom that somebody had made. And it's kind of hard to see here. I'm trying to be careful, but again, I'll show close up so you can really see what's going on here. But the wig cap has the same exact construction of all of the 1986 wig caps that Goods was making for Pleasant Company. It's that very distinct straight line at the back with this, it's not scalloped, but it almost looks like a micro scallop. You'll see on the screen as I'm talking about it, but it's constructed exactly the same. It's just a little bit darker, obviously, to match the hair fiber that's, you know, coming out of the wig. This Kanekalon is obviously like a black tone, so they would have a darker wig cap. So another really cool thing about this doll, it wasn't just, I don't think something that was just pieced together randomly. It could have been, but if it was pieced together, it was done, I think, at Pleasant Company before like throwing this in the employee sale bin. But that is a really cool feature about her. This wasn't just a bald doll that was given an aftermarket wig. It is a true, genuine Goods wig. I'm not going to undress this doll while I'm actually filming this video, but I will do some video after the fact so you can kind of see how her body and everything is constructed like the original white body Pleasant Company dolls. And the reason for that is obviously I don't want to get distracted while I'm filming, if I'm trying to look at the camera or whatever and accidentally snag something, because she does have the original flat neck strings. like the 1986 dolls had. And Pleasant Company was running those neck strings up through 1991. So they had them for a few years. But again, the construction on the body of this doll is an exact replica to what the Pleasant Company dolls were like in 1986. Pretty much with no changes. And because it was so early in the company, like they weren't actually matching the joint cups to either the torso or the limbs. So she has the same joint cup color as the 1986 dolls as well. It's like kind of like that salmon pink color, and the joints are very misshapen. They're not like a perfectly round cup. They kind of are elongated and don't like really house the joints that well for the like the doll's limbs basically. But as far as like the molding and construction of this doll, she is a perfect match to a 1986 Pleasant Company doll. I have a few questions about her outfit, again mainly because a little bit of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. One thing that I do know for sure, and again, it was just further confirmation that this was a Goods produced Pleasant Company prototype, is that her shoes and socks, they're a perfect match for a 1986 Molly, actually. So these Mary Janes that both Samantha and Molly had are pretty much the same Mary Janes they have even up to this day. They kept that original mold. But one interesting thing about the original ones, which I have only seen on 1986 dolls, I think that they figured this out pretty quickly and changed it basically in 1987, is that the Mary Janes on most of the 1986 dolls get very, very hard. Like they are a hard plastic that is pretty much impossible to put on a doll's foot, especially if the doll doesn't have squishy vinyl. Now this doll has very squishy vinyl. Trying to get her to stand up. Hang on one sec. This doll's vinyl is very squishy. I'm just going to briefly show you on one of her legs. Like it is as squishy as the original Pleasant Company dolls. If you've never seen a white body Pleasant Company doll before, those earliest ones are almost as squishy as like dog toys. They are very, very squishy. You might have seen some pictures on eBay where they like grab their face and like pinch them to where their fingers touch. Very, very squishy. And this doll is no exception. She has that really, really squishy, like mid 80s Goods vinyl. So I probably would technically be able to take her shoes off and put them on just because her feet are so squishy. I could probably squish them in, but these shoes are like, they have no give in them. They are basically a super hard plastic, and if you're not careful you can actually break the straps on them because they have no give on them. So this doll's shoes are never coming off. If there's something on the bottom of her foot, it's just going to have to remain a mystery until somebody else gets a hold of this doll. But her shoes are on again in a very professional way. I have to say they're extremely difficult to take off and put on, like to get her socks and shoes on without making them like really wrinkled and stretched. This looks like a factory issue shoe and sock basically. So I'm going to leave these exactly as is. Again, these are perfect matches for Molly's socks that we see in 1986 through the early 90s. They're, again, that classic Goods sock that they were making like thousands and thousands of, a very common thing for them to use. So this, from the ankles down, that is official Goods, official Pleasant Company, all the same materials that match 1986 completely. The big question is what is this outfit she's wearing? So I don't know a lot about historical fashion. My guess is this might have just been a dress that they put on the doll so that they could sell the doll. I do not know. I would love for anybody that has a little bit more of a historical fashion sense to maybe chime in the comments if you know anything more than I do, which is, you know, not very difficult at this point. But one thing I thought that they could maybe potentially make this a Samantha idea, like for a prototype, is the fact that the dress was blue. I want to say that around Edwardian times, blue was a girl's color and pink was a boy's color. I'm pretty sure around the turn of the century, it was pink was for boys, blue was for girls. I could have that a little bit wrong, but I thought, oh, maybe they were giving her a blue dress to illustrate that blue was for girls. I don't know. To me, this silhouette of this dress does not look super Edwardian, but at the same time, it's not so far off of Samantha's, like her play dress, kind of the thing that had the pinafore, because we've got this like, is this called a yoke? I think it's called a yoke. We've got this collar. I don't know. To my eye, this does not look super Edwardian to me, but it might be one of those things that could technically be correct. I don't know. I could be easily convinced that this was just a random Goods dress for an 18-inch doll that they just had for like a material sample maybe that they just threw on the doll to sell her. I don't know that this was like an original concept for Samantha. I would love to know if it potentially could be. I don't have enough fashion sense to know that for sure, whether or not. So, you know, in my hopeful mind, obviously this is my doll and I think she's so cool and I want it to be an original Samantha prototype. But, you know, more than anything, I just want to know the truth. Is it possible? Yes. I just don't know for sure, you know, if it actually was the concept that was requested of Goods to make as part of like the Pleasant Company lore, or if it was just an extra dress. One thing that's very interesting is I have done this is the thing, like, I think that I have struggled the most to kind of figure out what the story is behind this, as you can tell. But at first, I didn't even know if this was a Goods made dress or if it was just like a random handmade dress that somebody maybe found elsewhere and just put on this doll. But if I had to guess, I would say as far as like employee sales go, they probably sold dolls at least with some outfits on them. And the reason I think this is likely a prototype dress is the construction looks very much like what Goods was making back in the day. There is very selective use of serging. So they did have access to sergers. As you can see here, like this bottom hem here is serged, but a lot of the seams in here are not. So like these side seams, for instance, have a raw edge, and they're just like, they basically have is it a saddle stitch? I can't remember what it's called, but just a straight stitch on the sides. So it has a handmade essence to it. This doesn't look like commercially made doll clothes, but again, Goods was an artisan doll company, so a lot of the things that they sold did have this kind of stitching on them, and I'm 99.9% sure that Goods made this entire outfit because of that. Again, it's very well made. It just has that sort of like artisanal handmade quality to it. One of the more interesting things about the outfit, again, reasons I know that this is likely made by Goods, is this outfit has elastics on it. Now, one way I know that this is an older dress and not one that was just slapped on this doll recently, is the elastic is just a tiny bit stretched out. It no longer functions. Thankfully, it's not like, you know, completely loose around her wrist, but this doesn't stretch anymore. So not only that, but the elastic is the same exact elastic that they were using in the original Samantha and Molly, like their bloomers that had that elastic on them, and same with Samantha's tights. Now, Samantha didn't have bloomers in 1986, but her tights did have an elastic on them, and it was the same exact elastic that is on the sleeves of this outfit. And in addition, this doll both has, I think this is called a slip, like, or like an underskirt maybe, but this underskirt here is again made with this very similar muslin to all the other things that Goods made. It has like sort of like an eyelet trim on the bottom, and the elastic on it and the gathering on it is very similar to how it looked, you know, for like Molly's bloomers, for instance. Very same exact stitching. Again, same exact color, and like it's the same exact elastics that Goods was using. Again, they're a little bit stretched out, so I'm trying not to like pull hard on them because they don't have the same spring that they used to. And also, interestingly, this doll, in addition to an underskirt, also has bloomers. And again, they're made almost exactly like, or I guess it was just Molly in 1986 that had bloomers like this, but they're made with the exact same construction. Basically, they're just a little bit longer. They're not like that puffball kind of thing that Molly's have, unless, I don't know, I think maybe it's possible. They look a little bit long to me to be the same bloomers that Molly had. They're just a little bit longer. Again, I'm not super like well versed in doll fashions, in, you know, as far as like how things are constructed. It's just is like what I've been able to observe in collecting, you know, hundreds of these things at this point. So to my eye, this outfit looks like something that was made by Goods. And what would be also helpful, if anybody has seen an outfit like this before, if we can find a picture of this in a Goods catalog or some other doll that was sold with this outfit, that might give us some information as well. Because if we can find this outfit like in a catalog or a picture of it anywhere else, then I would be convinced it was just some generic outfit that Goods was making. So that's something that I've been trying to look out for, and I haven't found anything, but it would be worth looking a little bit more. So yeah, this is probably my most treasured doll in my entire collection, based on what I've been able to assume about her and some of the information that I've been given. Very, very, very awesome. I have never seen another doll look anything like this as far as Pleasant Company is concerned. And again, she's still kind of shrouded in mystery. If you know anybody that knows anybody that knows anybody that knows anybody, I would love any information you have about this doll. You can leave a comment below, or if you want to message me privately, you can find my contact information on my website, which is linked in the description. But I'm so excited to finally share her with everybody now that, you know, I've had her for several months and been able to try and like figure out whatever I can about her. Because again, she's a little bit of a mystery doll, but certainly probably the single coolest doll in my or actually in my entire doll collection. And I have some pretty cool dolls. You've seen a lot of them. And there's actually another one that we'll probably look at maybe next week that's not as cool as this one, but pretty dang cool. So like I said, if I could call in any favors, now is the time to do it. I would love any extra information that you would have about this doll. Certainly if it's validated information, but if you have any guesses about things, I'd love to hear your theories about her. This doll just kind of popped up out of nowhere, and I have still so many questions, and I think a lot of you watching this video might have a ton of questions as well. So hopefully we can kind of get to the bottom of it and find a little bit more information about her. But like I said, I'm so incredibly proud to have her. I'm so glad that I have a space where I can share her with people and we can kind of talk about her and maybe dig up some more information. But that's probably going to do it for today. I know my posting has been a little bit sporadic, more so than usual. For the first couple of years with this channel, I was able to post at least once a week, every single week, but life has gotten a little bit weird, and I'm also struggling with some admin stuff as far as YouTube goes. I'm still dealing with having a lot of my content being marked as made for kids and not adults, which is creating a lot of problems logistically for my channel. So I've got a lot of really awesome content that I've been working on for months that I'm so excited to share, but I'm too scared to upload it while my channel kind of is in limbo right now. So certainly, like, if you can engage with this video at all, like, leaving a comment or a like or anything, certainly subscribe if you haven't already, please. That will kind of help get my channel out of the YouTube kids graveyard. I've definitely been struggling. It's been like not fun to deal with. So that's one of the reasons my channel has been kind of a little bit sporadic this year, is because I've been dealing with some of that stuff, but hopefully it'll get resolved soon and I'll be back to my normal publishing schedule. Because like I said, there's so much content that I have banked up that I'm so excited to share. So thank you for being so patient with me. And again, thank you to everyone on the Patreon who's helping support this channel so I can continue doing all of this stuff, because my revenue has been cut significantly on YouTube thanks to like all of the struggles I've been dealing with on the back end of things. So my Patreon friends have really helped keep this going. And if you want to check it out, you can find it at patreon.com/idreamofjohnny. There's a ton of extra content there. Like if you've never been on the Patreon before, you'll have like weeks and weeks and weeks worth of just nonstop content about American Girl, and a lot of like really deep dive information as well. One of the things I've really been enjoying doing is basically opening up eBay and spending an hour just like absolutely roasting eBay listings and educating the audience about a lot of the information in them. It's helped a lot of people learn what to look out for when buying vintage American Girl dolls, things that are valuable, ways of spotting scams, and sellers that are maybe not telling the entire truth. So if you're really thinking about getting into purchasing vintage Pleasant Company, it's a really, really great resource. But even if not, it's, I think, kind of fun to just pull up listings and, say a couple of mean things here and there, because, sometimes it's fun to be a little bit naughty. So anyway, yeah, I hope you'll check out the Patreon. And until I see you next time, please be sure to take care of yourself and each other, and maybe take a break from your phone every once in a while. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye.